Seraphina Vale had not slept more than 3 consecutive hours in 22 days. She knew the number exactly because she had started counting, the way exhausted people count the things they can still control when everything else is unraveling. 22 days since Elowen Sky had come into the world, small and red-faced and impossibly fragile. 22 days since Seraphina's entire identity had quietly been swallowed by someone who weighed less than 7 pounds. And then there was Caius. Caius' ruin was enormous. A rescue, a charcoal-gray cane corso with a chest like a barrel, and paws the size of a grown man's hand spread wide. She had adopted him 2 years earlier from a shelter that had held him for 6 months with a sign on his kennel that read, "Gentle Giant, just needs patience." She had given him that patience. He had given her 2 years of steadiness, sleeping at the foot of her bed every night, moving through the world with the slow, deliberate calm she had come to find deeply comforting. But Elowen had arrived, and everything Seraphina thought she trusted started to feel uncertain. It started with her mother. A dog that size shouldn't be in the same room. Then her friend Margot stood in the doorway watching Caius watch the bassinet and said very quietly, "I don't know how you're okay with this." Then her neighbor Gerald, who had always liked Caius' expression, leaned over in the elevator and said, "Instincts change when there's a baby around." Even in the calmest dogs, one voice was easy to dismiss. 5 voices began to sound like a chorus. "He's never hurt anyone," Seraphina said to her friend Delia one morning, her voice thin with tiredness. "I know," Delia said carefully, "but Sarah, one wrong move, he doesn't even have to mean it." His paw alone could— "I know what his paw could do," Seraphina snapped. Then she looked down at the mug in her hands and realized she was trembling. "Sorry, I know him." "You knew him before," Delia said. And that sentence lodged itself somewhere in Seraphina's chest and refused to leave. Because the honest, terrible truth was that she had started watching Caius differently. How he positioned himself near the bassinet each evening, how his amber eyes tracked every sound Elowen made, how he would rise the moment the baby stirred, padding silently to stand at the edge of the room, watching. She told herself it was loyalty. She told herself it was curiosity. But with 5 warnings stacked up in the back of her exhausted mind, she had started to ask herself a question she hated. What if I'm wrong about him? She installed a gate across the hallway doorway. Caius would lie against it, his big head resting on his paws, eyes following her. He never pushed against it. He never made a sound. He just waited, and somehow that patience made the doubt worse, because she couldn't understand why he was so focused on the baby, and what she couldn't understand she couldn't trust. The morning it happened had started badly. Elowen had been awake most of the night. By 10, the baby had finally fallen into a deep, heavy sleep, and Seraphina had placed her on the wide white leather couch, surrounded by the rolled blanket barrier she used to keep her in place. She had done this a dozen times. She was always careful. She had also, without realizing it, left the hallway gate unlatched. She'd been carrying laundry, bumped the gate on her way through, and in the same instant Elowen had whimpered and her entire nervous system had redirected toward the sound. She'd gone back checked. When she turned to walk back, she heard the soft, familiar sound of Caius's nails on the hardwood. She stepped into the hallway and saw the gate swinging open. She moved faster than she had in weeks, nearly stumbling. One hand catching the wall, and she came through the living room door and stopped. Caius was on the couch. He was lying beside Elowen, his massive body curved against the length of the baby's, and one heavy charcoal-gray paw was resting across Elowin's tiny torso. The world contracted. Every warning she had heard, every whispered concern, every image her exhausted brain had constructed over 3 weeks crashed through her simultaneously. For one terrible second, she was completely certain she was looking at a catastrophe already in progress. Caius. Her voice came out wrong. Too high, too thin. He didn't move. His amber eyes found hers immediately and held them. He was utterly still, not frozen, not startled, but still in the way that suggested deliberateness. His body was wedged between Elowin and the far edge of the couch. Cross. His paw rested across the baby with a gentleness that didn't compute against her panic. She moved closer because she had to, and as she closed the distance, she saw something that stopped her cold. Compression. The rolled blanket barrier had shifted. One end had come loose and bunched to the side. The cushion beneath Elowin showed a slight depression near the outer edge, and Elowin herself was angled, her small body tilted toward the drop. She had been rolling. Seraphina grabbed the back of the couch to stay upright and looked at the scene again, really looked at it, and the story it told was entirely different from the one she had written in the doorway. Caius hadn't climbed onto the couch to hover over the baby. He had climbed onto the couch because the baby was moving. He had positioned himself between Elowin and the edge, his body a wall, his paw a gentle anchor, not pressing, not gripping, just enough to interrupt the slow, unconscious drift toward the drop. She reached out with shaking hands and lifted his paw. He allowed it with complete passivity, watching her face. She slid her hands under Elowin, still asleep, still breathing, her small chest rising and falling with perfect calm, and held her close. Seraphina sat down on the floor right where she was, her back against the couch, her daughter pressed against her chest. Caius lowered his head over the edge of the cushion, his big jaw resting on the leather, watching her. She didn't know when she started she couldn't stop. That evening, she sat with Elowin asleep in the bassinet beside her, and Caius lying across her legs, his full, enormous weight pressing into her, and she put both hands on the sides of his big, serious face and looked at him. "I'm sorry," she said. "I let them make me scared of you, and you were never the thing I needed to be scared of." His tail moved once, slow, heavy. She had spent 3 weeks constructing a version of Caius built from other people's anxiety. He had spent 3 weeks being exactly who he had always been, watchful, steady, present. While she was keeping him behind a gate, he was paying attention. And when the moment came that actually mattered, he had not hesitated. If this story moved you, like, comment, and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it.